the thing that, I wasn't intentionally like, okay, I'm gonna make the computer album or whatever. It was really just what was resonating with me and what I was finding interesting. That's usually what happens with me when I'm making a record is I'll have like just a glimmer of an idea and I'll write it down and it'll make me smile or it'll make me laugh or something. And I like to take a theme or an idea and just extract everything you possibly can get out of it. Like I treat it like a buffalo. I use every part of the idea.
Microphone check, 1 2. What is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service. Here we are again at the end of a rainbow. Making a name for yourself as an artist with a unique perspective and a unique sound is impressive in its own right. But doing so outside of a major hub for the music you make, in this case hip hop, which is still a genre where locality plays a significant role in how you're perceived as an artist, just adds to the difficulty level to really have success. But that's just what Cadence Weapon has achieved. Born in Edmonton, a city in Western Canada, Cadence has brought his unique flavor of thoughtful lyricism and cutting-edge sound to listeners for roughly 2 decades, earning a Polaris Prize for the most outstanding album in 2021 for Parallel World. His impact as an artist has extended past just music, making a name for himself as a music journalist as well, along with being an author with his 2023 book, Bedroom Rapper. Now in 2024, Cadence Weapon has returned with his internet-inspired new album, ROLLERCOASTER. And he's here today to discuss the making of this record and gives his take on some other hot-button topics such as Canada's unique musical and political landscape, industry plants, and much, much more. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth artist interviews, album reviews, and general rap commentary on the best that the underground rap scene has to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. Cadence Weapon, how you doing today?
Oh, we're hanging in there. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. We had some sun. It's Mother's Day today, so and my wife is a new mother, so we went out and picked up flowers. We went to the flower shop
That's
today.
cute. So it's been a tough past few weeks to be a Canadian, particularly in the hip hop world, it seems. People listening don't need me to remind them about, one of the hot button topics, this Kendrick Drake beef. And or one of the notable topics of discussion revolved around this that I found fascinating is this whole idea of Drake, so Canadian rapper Drake, his contributions or lack thereof to the hip hop culture. And that culture vulture label was foisted upon him by Kendrick and a lot of the people that think like him. And the flip side to that, or at least another view of that, was that people would say, hey, but he put Canada on the map. He had all of this impact. And that's why I bring it up, because I find outside of the Drake piece, it's more just the framing of it. The Canadian hip hop scene isn't an interesting space. I think for sure if you compare it to 20 years ago in terms of at least being a place where people think hip hop exists and can be good, I think it's definitely way different. But I don't know if it's really necessarily thriving like people may assume just because we have this one or a couple like big superstars. So, in your opinion, like, is the scene thriving? Is it stale? Like, what's your take on the health of the Canadian hip hop scene?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was around before Drake, and I'll be around after. And it's been really interesting to see the Americans how they see blackness in Canada and like what that really means and how it seems like everything they know about Canada is just by the handful of celebrities that they see. Like the difference is Canadians, we know everything about America because it's we get all your media. We our history books is all American stuff. You know,
Yeah.
like we I know every state. Like, why do I know that, right? But I find it quite interesting how people have turned around. They're like, "Oh, Drake, he's a culture vulture. He can't have black identity because he's not from America. He's, there's no Toronto sound." Like people are just coming up with all this stuff, and it just shows how tenuous our place in hip hop is.
Mm.
One guy loses a rap battle, and suddenly, we're gonna pretend like the 2010s weren't a bunch of Americans pretending to be from Toronto using like lo-fi R&B beats and stuff. Like we're gonna
Hmm.
pretend that didn't happen now. Like no, I remember all the Americans who I'd meet in when I lived in Toronto, and they'd be like, "Yo, yeah, like I had to move to the six. Like I'm trying to be the next weekend." Like I've had so many people said that. So let's not flip the script. But the Canadian hip hop scene. I feel like the thing I love about it is it's really self-contained and it always has been, and it's gonna just do its own thing. Like I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff that doesn't get really highlighted in the States or just in the larger world around us. There's a lot of cool artists from Canada, like I'd say like Skyfall, it's really cool.
Mm, yeah, I've seen him perform
Um,
as like an opener once. He was dope.
Wicked, yeah, no, he's really good. And there's a lot of rappers that I really like. Like on my album, Miss Milano, I'll give a shout out to Backwash, who's on my last record. There's like a lot of different styles too. Oh, Cartel Madras, they're another great rap group, originally from Calgary. So there's different like styles and sounds, and it's a really vibrant tapestry of music, but you would think it was all just Drake. And
Hmm.
that's really actually been the problem over these years and why you don't really see anyone sticking up for him from Canada or anywhere else really,
Yeah.
is because he takes up so much oxygen. He always has, and he's like this become this larger than life figure that now every time I do an interview for like basically like half my life, people ask me about Drake.
Yeah, as if you shouldn't. It's like you're from Canada, you know Drake, right?
Yeah, and to me, and it's like it's not hugely relevant because it's like to me, it's like asking, oh, it's like asking HR from Bad Brains about Lionel Richie in like the 80s.
Hmm.
It's like why? It's like we're both black
Yeah.
and we're from America. Like it doesn't make any sense, So yeah, I think that's people are maybe looking forward to a time where we can just be our own artists and not really have to base everything we do and reflect it off of this one guy.
Yeah, I feel like there is I feel like in that conversation, I think when it comes to the sound of like it's again, even just the idea of I almost kind of play into it in the question where it's like a Canadian hip hop scene is like asking it's just it's not the exact same, but it's like you would never say that about the States, being like, what's the American hip hop scene? Like you'd be like, what, Brooklyn, like Queensbridge, like the South, like you there's so many different nuances. And even when we talk about Canada, I think that kind of gets lost a lot. And you're so right about the 2010s was all that like dreary kind of synth washed kind of like the I always just call it like even though I don't know where's Bryson Tiller from.
Oh, that's funny. He's from the States. He's from
Yeah,
like
he's from the
he's
States, but he's the
he
quintessential Toronto sound. Like that's what everybody tries to do.
when he first came on the scene, everybody thought he was from Toronto.
Yeah.
But no, he's trying to catch a wave, right? And
Hmm.
we're doing that, the Party Next Door, G Jordan, like all these artists, this kind of like Toronto at night kind of feeling. That was always is like driving on the Gardner. Like it's something evocative about the way they were making music at that time. And so many people imitated it. So like let's be real here. And even before that too, which people like to have recency bias all the time. Shout out to Cardinal official and all these amazing artists, Mishi Me, there's this strong Jamaican like reggae influence in a lot of Canadian rap. that existed before Drake. So this idea of like, oh, he's a culture vulture. He's like doing all these pretend accents and everything. It's like, well, actually, that is has been a Toronto accent for like a really long time.
Hmm.
It's just we don't like the person who's doing it, or we
Yeah.
don't like the way he's doing it. And I will acknowledge that he certainly has some culture vulture tendencies. Like obviously this he's changing the accents. He's
Hmm.
the thing that people don't understand about Drake is he is clearly just a really enthusiastic, excited person, and he's trying all these different things, and he's doing what any Canadian kid who got to where he is would want to do. The thing about us is we are outside of the American hip hop scene. We are on the outside looking in most of the time, and we're like able to take in a little bit of everything because we don't have the same defined characteristics of our sound that a rapper from LA would have or a rapper
Right.
from New York would. And that was a huge advantage for me. I was able to make just this weird music that is just this jumble of a bunch of things because there wasn't somebody being like, yo, this is how we make Edmonton hip hop and
Right. You're right.
it's gotta be
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned there that is relevant to me is that idea of being a Canadian and being a Canadian rapper, but then just being a Canadian has a connotation of this like super nice, super like whatever that like classic Canadian stereotype that is still exists for some reason.
Canadians are not nice, man.
I know, and it's like,
No,
but it's
bro.
like literally they're like you say sorry, like it's we're still in that like unfortunately that's still how people talk about
Let me
Canada.
tell you what Canadians are like. Canadians are passive aggressive. They seem nice on the outside, but as soon as you turn your back, they're like, fuck that guy. Or they won't even say it like out loud. That's the thing. They'll secretly undermine you for the rest of your life.
That sounds so insidious, but I
Yeah.
mean, there's some truth to that. And you have a very I bring that up because you have a very poignant line on the new album on EFT where you rap, "In my country, false humility every day." And
Mhm.
I'm from the same country. I used to live though specifically, like right now I'm in Toronto, but I used to live in Ottawa, born and raised my whole life. So
Mhm.
that's the nation's capital. So that's
Mhm.
like when it's Canada Day, like that was actually a true holiday. Like it's a holiday everywhere, but it's a real like people have more patriotism as you'd imagine there, right?
Mhm.
And so in particular, I've experienced and observed that very specific brand of I don't know if it's like national superiority or
Mhm.
pride that always seems to be weirdly based on the fact that we're not America, where it's like, oh, well, we have our problems, but in the States, like they don't even have healthcare, or it's like, yeah, we're not perfect, but Americans, they're like really racist. And it's like, okay, whether that's true or not, like, what about us? Like, what are we doing? Like, you kind of just deflecting, and it's this like strange kind of pride that is always felt really weird, especially when it comes to trying to criticize and have like and hold your own country and your leaders accountable. And so, as someone as you who's been active in trying to enact change in your community, describe that like the particularly unique challenge that lies in pushing for social justice within Canada specifically.
Yeah, Canada, they have the best PR of any country. I don't know how they did it, but they made it seem like, we're nice, innocent, kindly people, and we're really polite and we'll just open the door for you and we say sorry all the time or whatever. But really, our country just has an extensive history of genocide and everything terrible you could possibly imagine for a country. But we use this identity of being Canadian, the good Canadian, as cover, right? And what I was talking about, like the false humility every day. Um, this is what I feel like a lot of individuals and I guess a lot of like white supremacy, I would say, would they put on the plaid shirt and suddenly every question about who they are goes away. They're just a regular Canadian guy, right? But and I feel like this is something that certain rock bands can do. They put on the kind of costume or whatever, and they can just blend in. Whereas if I want to celebrate my identity and I want to get hype about my achievements and not do the whole false humility thing, people are like, "Oh, well, wait a minute. No, like you're not being shy and polite and quiet
Hmm.
and tiny enough." even though if I, if I was a white man in like an indie rock band wearing a plaid shirt, I could be like a billionaire and it wouldn't matter. Like the cover of just that identity would be like fine. So that's what I'm kind of talking about on that song.
Yeah, you can even see that when people talk about hockey and like hockey players
Hmm.
and compare that to how they act in like their random like because it's a meme at this point. It's like the way they talk after their games. They're like, yeah, we just got to put the puck down the ice. We just got to forecheck. Like, I
Both
played
teams
hockey,
play.
so I
Both teams fought hard.
yeah, both teams fought hard there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to like NBA or football where it's a lot more of a American based but a lot more diverse. You just see the way they talk about them being more cocky or them the way they express themselves and all of a sudden there's this like really weird standard that has been set on one side and not the other.
No, for sure. And the thing is, like, they perceive it as cockiness, but like, wouldn't you want to celebrate what you've done if you were in the like top 0.00001 percentile of people who do what you do?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, celebrate. Like I'm celebrating, I don't want to hide how I feel. I think it's important to put yourself out there in that way because I got kind of sick of having to like play the game of like, oh, if I talk about this too much, they're not gonna give me this award or they're not gonna nominate me or
Hmm.
whatever. And it's like I just kind of got sick of that. So yeah, it's just a very Canadian thing. Canadians like hate themselves. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's this kind of self-loathing that goes with being a Canadian, where it's like we only want to celebrate our greatest artists once other countries have, and it's like all the way from music to acting, just every field. You got to make it somewhere else before you're taken seriously in Canada. And it was the same for Drake as well, right?
Hmm.
So it was only once he got the American cosign, he got those record deals and everything that suddenly in Canada we were like, oh, he's actually good. I'm like, this is so whack that it that's what it took.
It's actually wild to me that you bring that you say that it's so true. Like the amount of actors that I only know they're Canadian after they're like a mega star, and I'm like, oh, they're Ryan Reynolds Canadian? Is he?
Yeah,
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds Canadian. Like
yeah.
that's an example. I'm like
Ryan
7 million
Gosling
years.
is
Yeah,
Canadian.
I'm like, oh, you did all these movies, and I'm like, you're Canadian. That's cool. Why was that not mentioned before? That's
Hmm.
strange. But and you've been outspoken politically, as I mentioned, and it's also not just through outside actions, outside of music, but in your music specifically. And in light of just all that's going on, there's an active genocide going on. There's so much that could be spoken about. There's so much that could be used with people's platforms. There's a lot of discussion being had right now about the role of artists and as it relates to spotlighting political issues, encouraging action. And so in today's day and age, how important is it to you as an artist to speak on these kinds of issues within your music?
I personally think it is important. I mean, just for me personally, that's how I want to use my platform. I want to uplift other people and give voice to the voiceless wherever I can, just personally. And that's like how I've really, I'm not the kind of person, I don't think of myself as a brand. I feel like a lot of artists, they're like brand conscious first, and they're like, okay, I don't want to say something that's going to fuck up the money. And me, I don't care about that kind of thing. I do have I have some misgivings about certain aspects of social media activism. Like, and I talk about that on this album. Just this idea where it's okay to just put up a black square and then you've done enough. Like, I don't really like, is it just the performative nature of a lot of it, and people, the whole idea being like, hey, like, did you say anything? I didn't see you say anything. And it's like, if you didn't say anything about this thing, then you're canceled. This
Hmm.
kind of like it's really this to me it's like a cabal of people who collectively are willing to do the absolute least in just like making a post or something, would never do anything in the real world with any organizing or anything like this, but they do want to police everyone's online behavior. I find that like really distasteful and really annoying. But I will say, free Palestine until it's backwards, obviously.
Yeah. No, I think that's you're exactly right because it's almost like a way it's a way for people I feel to like it's not even to feel because it doesn't come from the core of what they're doing with all those actions aren't that they care. It's that they want to make themselves feel better that they're like it's almost like a way to like absolve themselves of guilt for not actually doing anything or changing their actions at all. But it's like, well, I can just get angry at people for doing things, and now I'm like I'm one of the people that care and they can feel good about it. It's
That's
just a
actually that's actually one thing Canadians love to do. They love to hold a position of superiority over other people.
yes,
So
yes, in other
say
countries, that's
in
exactly
other
what I was
countries,
saying.
like
Yeah.
it's the same thing with people though. Like they like love to do that. They love to be like, well, actually, about like anything. Like they love to do that. They're like we're the country of hall monitors, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that whole idea of it feels like you're just checking off the box. You know, that's what it looks like. And for me, it's also very transparent that some people are really just trying to build up their platform and get more eyeballs and get more attention to like their other thing. And that's what it's really about for them. Like it's not really about helping anybody or like the particular cause because it's going to be a different cause at a different time. And I feel like I've seen some people who are they want to have the appearance of being progressive without actually doing anything
Hmm.
of consequence. So I don't know. I have a bit of like a nuanced view about the posting because the other thing about that too that I find really frustrating is I want to use my platform. I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to do positive things with it. But then I actually don't like enriching the social media companies by giving them more content to like spread out to people and to use these political causes to make more money and sell more ads and stuff. So I really don't want to be complicit in doing that either. So I'm kind of I'm in my press eject era right now. Like I really am, that's my red button. Like I'm really close to just being like never posting again. Yeah. Like yeah, young boy never post again. That would be me.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm going to never post again. That's good.
Yeah.
Uh Yeah, like you have a now this is one thing we'll get into the album more detail soon, but I mean, I just I love it that I can have so many conversation topics just based off of the album. Like, oh, this song you because it's really good with that. And one of the songs, Shadow Band, is really relevant to what we're talking about because while it is kind of tongue in cheek in tone at times, it does highlight that very precarious position that artists are in when it comes to using these platforms that we don't own or you don't own in this context, artists that and don't control, but you need to use them theoretically to kind of push your music, get a living, survive and all of that. And so zeroing in on life as a working artist, trying to connect with fans, market your music, social media is a key tool to get the job done, but it feels like less and less dependable every day. So, as an artist, how do you feel social media is best used and what other tools or ways can someone kind of grow their fan base outside of social media in your
Yeah,
mind?
in my experience now, it really feels like social media is just totally useless as an artist. They've made it that way by design, and it feels like a bit of a bait and switch because we're the people who bring a lot of people to these platforms. Like as soon as you join a new platform, what do? You look for your favorite artists on there, and it just feels like we don't really have equal footing to the amount of benefit we bring to these platforms as artists and as individuals too. That's a big part of what I'm talking about on this album is I really want people to have more agency in what they do online and really think about it a little bit more. Because if we're not on these platforms, they're totally worthless, right? And I mean in a literal sense, like they can't get money from VCs. They can't expand. They can't do anything if they don't have those follower numbers. It's kind of ironic, right? It's like they need the followers, they need the downloads, just the same way that artists do stuff. So I do feel like it is pretty futile at this point. Like even promoting this album, I just came up against so many roadblocks, and I feel like the only stuff that worked it would be when I had to use like some kind of trickery to get through everything. Like I
What does
one of the
that mean?
most yeah one of the most successful videos I did it was like a reel or like a TikTok about the top five submarine sandwich restaurants in Hamilton and where I live, and I was using it to promote my show in Hamilton. And it actually was quite successful and it went viral. And I'd be walking down the street and people are just like, "Hey, it's the sub guy,"
Wow, damn.
right? And so it's like they will spread your message if it's something that they think they'll get a lot of eyeballs on and they'll profit from. But as soon as you start talking about, "Hey, this is my new album," it's almost like there's like a hotkey that where whenever it says album, they're just like downgrade, downvote, downvote. Don't let anybody see this.
Yeah, it's even like as trying to promote this podcast, I feel like it's any little bit of success I get is just in contrasted with so much opportunities that were downgraded by the algorithm and propped up other things like random like viral tweets of like, oh, who's better, ASAP Rocky or
Mhm.
Migos? It's like these random engagement farming things that
Mhm.
it's just really sad sometimes.
Well, I feel like that's really what the internet has become. You know, it went from being this totally wild, untamed place where people could have all kinds of conversations about very granular, specific things, and you felt more connected to the world around you. That's how the early internet was. But now it just feels like everyone is playing this kind of slot machine. You know, it feels like we're in a casino, and it's like everybody's trying to hit the jackpot and get a viral post. And
Yeah,
it feels I just find it so distasteful. Just it's so obvious like some of the engagement farming that people have to do. And I know it's incentivized by these platforms, but it just I don't know. It's funny, like every platform it'll start off with a creative premise, and then eventually it always ends up in this same place that we're at now, where it's like, what are your, what is the album that makes you think of being 18 the most or whatever? And it's like we're in this dead internet era of just we're in a feedback loop of posting about the same exact things for our entire lives. It's really terrible.
it's like in the this week was the first week of this like post Kendrick Drake beef where there was not like music out and there were jokes about this while things were like popping off and it was so sad how real they were. People were like, "Man, the one thing we got to thank these two guys is that I've been on Twitter for a week and I haven't seen any posts about dating discourse and like who should pay on the first date." And literally on Monday, I saw
Oh,
like five of them. It's like, guys, like I just have this original thought. Like, are you okay if the man doesn't pay on the
yeah,
first date? It's
exactly.
like, oh my God, stop, please leave me alone.
That's so
It's
funny.
so sad.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's like how quickly we went back to that, you know?
Just oh,
But then that's the thing is like a lot of these platforms, they really encourage things that are going to get a lot of conversation and things that are going to get people really mad. That's what
hmm
I feel like half of the time I'm on Twitter, it's just a bunch of things in a row that are designed to make me as angry as possible. Like I keep scrolling, I'm just like, "Ugh." Scrolling, I'm like, I'm so mad. And then it's like I stop using my phone and I'm like walking around my house, like, and I'm still mad.
hmm
And this is really the thesis of my album is like I don't want to be mad anymore for no reason.
That's a good thesis. And like you've had a very multifaceted career that extends outside of music. You've written a book, Bedroom Rapper, that talks about your career, your learnings, and you've also served as a music journalist writing for Pitchfork. And given the large breadth of different perspectives you've had in the music business, not just as an artist, but in as a journalist and then even other creative mediums, what would you say were some of the more important lessons that you've learned throughout these couple decades you've been an artist?
Wow, I mean, it's a big question. I feel like things have changed so much. You know, I've seen a lot change in a really short period of time. Like the way things were when I first hit the scene, even just online, like things were just much slower. There was less noise. You could easily reach people, and it wasn't everything wasn't monetized. That was the thing. Things were it was just like a lot of piracy. We were all just downloading programs and making beats, and you're on a message board, and there was just no ads really anywhere. Like there was barely any pop-ups. It was just now it's just it feels like it's a funnel that's just directing us all towards the buy it now button everywhere, you know? Um but yeah, what have I what have I learned? I've learned one of the things that's really given me longevity is realizing that you know, you don't have to bend to every trend that happens. And I
Mm.
think that's one thing that really gave me a lot of longevity is that I never leaned too hard into any particular trend, and I always stayed true to myself. And that has always really helped me. Um, Now I feel like that's kind of counterproductive to the way that people tell you to be now with like TikTok. They want you to literally do the same
The
thing that
trends.
everybody else is
Yeah.
doing, like the trends. But I really think everything that has worked well for me has been a result of me being as original as possible.
I mean, even like just from breaking kayfabe, like I was revisiting that project this week, and it's crazy that that came out in the mid 2000s. Like
For
crazy.
sure, for
And
sure.
I can't imagine how that must have like been received from someone like because it's not just the sound, it's not just when it dropped, which would have if you were in, Atlanta or New York and dropped that, it still would have been like, whoa, this is different. But where you were from in Edmonton, like that must have been like quite a bold move for you and taken a lot of kind of guts to say like, no, this is good. I like this. This inspires me. And that's really impressive.
I mean, that was well, thank you. But that was the whole thing is it was a true representation of who I am. And that always works in art. Like the more of yourself you put into something and it's really true to yourself, the more people resonate with it. And with my first record, nobody else could have done something like that. You know, and it's interesting to see how its legacy changes over time. Because like when it first came out, it definitely was really well received, and like it was really critically well received. But even just in Edmonton, like people knew I was becoming popular or whatever. I was getting some attention from outside the city, but I don't think they really got the record that much. Like your average person didn't really understand what I was doing.
Mhm.
Um, it's something that I have so many feelings about it because I feel like, yeah, if I was from New York and I put out that record, I'd probably be Kid Cudi right now or whatever, right? But it's like I'm from a random town in Canada. It doesn't quite hit the same, but I don't know. I'm really happy with where I'm at, and I feel like I make that mood board music.
Mm.
It's like if you want to know a direction to go, just listen to my records because I always know what is going to be the next thing.
That's real. That's real. And going to that book that was mentioned, Bedroom Rapper, like, that's a very big step, obviously, writing a whole ass book, like going from music, you did journalism, but that's a big step. What was the primary kind of idea, goal behind that book that you were really hoping to achieve with it?
Well, I'd always wanted to write a book, and I had the opportunity. I got asked by the publisher, McClellan and Stewart, if I had any ideas, and I was like, "Yeah, actually, I do." And the timing was actually perfect because then it was a pandemic, so I was just locked in writing this book, and it required me. It's a memoir, so it required me to just go back and examine my entire career and my past and it was interesting because I was writing that at the same time I was making Parallel World. So I was in this mindset of when I had first started making music, and I think that really influenced the way I made that album. Yeah, it's a crazy process writing a book. Like I'm supposed to be writing my second one now, and it's
Oh, wow,
ha-
nice.
yeah. So that's on the way. It's called Ways of Listening. It's a book of essays about music and how like listening in the streaming era and stuff like that. But it's definitely a crazy experience writing a book because it's like you could what write a couple thousand words one day and then the next day you write nothing, but both days can be successful.
Hmm.
That's an interesting thing. Like maybe the other day you did some research or you moved around something you wrote already or you like changed something, edited something. Like the success isn't linear when you're writing a book. Like it's not like the same as like when you make an album, it's like, yeah, I made these songs and stuff. And it's just it's just a curious process for sure.
I like that idea of the success not being linear because I find that's something that's really, really is gratifying working on anything creative in my life compared to, what I do in my kind of day job, which is very just business. Like it's nice to know like when I'm preparing for an interview and I've maybe have 5 to 8 hours, 10 hours of prep over like a couple weeks, whatever it may be, as an example. 6 of those hours could be kind of blank. It could be like, I don't really know what to talk about. And then you just have 2 hours of gold and all of that. And you could even 10 hours of work, you could be done in three. It's just a beautiful thing. And it kind of like, I just like it feels very magical because it's not formulaic. It's like one of the, like creativity by definition is just like boundaryless. Like there's no rules, which is like, whereas everything can feel super tired and like, you know what happens, you know how long this takes, you know what to expect. It just kind of takes the life out of it.
Yeah, it's magic. It really is magic. And I think the cool thing about it is you can't control when it's going to happen totally, right? But you can put yourself in a position for it to happen again.
Yeah.
You can, I find I talk about this in the book too, but like I find I'm most creative when I'm healthy or something, when I'm eating well, when I'm like drinking a lot of water, when I'm going for runs and stuff. That's when I get a lot of ideas and I feel like my most creative. So it's like if you know what works for you, you can create those circumstances as frequently as you want.
Yeah, that's really important because, yeah, I think for me as well, it's definitely always about health, but it's simultaneously the thing in sleep to start. But it's the simultaneously the thing that I do it's hard for me because if I'm behind, I just want to work more, and I keep compounding this vicious cycle where it's like I need to slow down, sleep, get my 8 hours, and then things start to just roll in a different way. But it takes that kind of like patience. But yeah, I want to talk about Roller Coaster now because I really like this album. I think you did a fantastic job with it, first and foremost. And as I was saying earlier, I just really love how I can have full conversations just by kind of picking a song. Oh, that's a cool topic. And then you can just kind of flow on something that's very poignant, very thought-provoking, time and time again with this record. And it's, discussing the computers, social media age, internet age we live in, how it influences us all, how it influences music in particular. And in a lot of ways, I find this record is kind of like a continuation from things you were talking about on Parallel World, but just kind of zeroed in more so on the internet, social media aspect of it. What inspired you to hone in on this specific theme and flesh it out as you did on this record?
Well, it really feels like a natural evolution from Parallel World. Like I was talking about a lot of socio-political stuff on that record and trying to figure out like zoom out and be like, okay, what are the big picture circumstances around why life isn't equal for different people from different racial backgrounds and stuff. That was like I was really trying to zoom out and be more documentarian with that record. And so I feel like coming off of songs like On Me and Connect from that album, it really is a natural evolution. Like I really wanted to just go harder in that direction. I think the thing that, I wasn't intentionally like, okay, I'm gonna make the computer album or whatever. It was really just what was resonating with me and what I was finding interesting. That's usually what happens with me when I'm making a record is I'll have like just a glimmer of an idea and I'll write it down. And it'll make me smile or it'll make me laugh or something, and it makes me want to just kind of. I like to take a theme or an idea and just extract everything you possibly can get out of it. Like I treat it like a buffalo. I use every part of the idea, and that's what I did really with every song and every theme on this record. And as cohesive, in my opinion, as the record is conceptually, it wasn't thought out to be that way at the outset of making it. It was really, I was actually in LA when I made a lot of it, when I wrote a lot of the songs and made the first demos. And I just noticed how technologically reliant people were in California. And I was just noticing how optimized everything was and how, you go to Target and it's just kiosks. There's no people, and it's just you go for a coffee and then it's like, just order it on your phone. It's like okay. So everything has been optimized to limit human interaction. And then I started thinking like every time you optimize something, what happens? A human loses a job, right? And I feel like one of the intersections of this record with the technological side is also workers' rights. That's a big
Yes.
thing I'm talking about a lot on Press Eject. I felt like that was like kind of a freelance kind of anthem. Yeah, the EFT is like that too. But that's how I ended up getting into these themes and when I would make the songs with people too, I would talk about, songs that I was interested in. We'd like bounce ideas off each other. Like sonically, I knew I wanted to make something that was more electro because I've always loved that music and I've loved DJing it, but I never made any tracks over beats like that before. So I was like, I'd like to have that in my discography. And I feel like it really comes together in quite a nice way, in my opinion.
Oh, I think it does. It's super cohesive, but at the same time, like yeah, I like how you say you extracted everything out of it because you took this that cohesive kind of focus, but in different little ways, different little angles, and flesh those out to where it's not just the same kind of discussion about these themes 12 different times, 15 different times on every track. It's different angles and then musically as well. And when we think about just this the themes that you are describing, I like how you made that intersection to workers' rights because that's really always what I think about when I see I'm checking out on a self-checkout at a kiosk. It makes me truly feel uncomfortable. And at the same time, I'm always just I don't really feel though at the same time I really know what the answer is because it's kind of hard where the market forces are ask is like it's naturally trending to where it's like how can we limit like spending, how can we limit the expenses, get the bottom line up, but at the same time it's like and you want to have technological advancement. It almost feels like you're countering something that you shouldn't counter, but we should though. And I just wonder like what's your thoughts on just where things are trending? Like do you feel like there's going to be like, do you feel like society will have a press eject moment where we're like, hey, you know what? We could keep going, but maybe let's just fucking stop and take a chill. Like, do you think that will actually happen?
Well, you're starting to see that, I think, with the Palestine and all the protests and things, and it was the same thing with the Black Lives Matter, and we're starting to see more uprisings and more, the Occupy Wall Street kind of thing. Like there's an undercurrent of this sentiment that keeps bubbling up, that people are tired of the way things are, they're tired of the status quo, and I guess I was just trying to tap into that feeling because I'm obviously I try and be a little somewhat neutral in how I present these ideas. I think it's obvious what my perspective is. Like if you know me, I'm
Hmm.
like a hardcore like left wing pinko nut job. Like I'm basically an anarchist. It's not. There's no question like where I stand politically, but I do think I try to have a bit of nuance in how I present it on the records because I feel like I want people to come to their own conclusions. But I feel like, yeah, this record, I'm trying to balance my need to use these machines and use these tools against my concern with being used by them.
Mm.
And this is something that I'm trying to tell people on this record is really like use technology, don't let it use you. And I feel like a lot of the direction things are going, it's, when I'm talking about automation, I'm talking about these kiosks, like we're next. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially as artists and intellectuals and writers, they are really looking to replace us as soon as they possibly can. They see it as like it's something that they have to pay for that they don't want to pay for. That's why I was so fired up when SAG-AFTRA they managed to fight back and really
Yeah.
defend against the AI stuff, because it's like that, I didn't even know that was like a thing, and it's like, whoa, like they really are trying to they'll film an extra one time and then reuse them over and over as AI. Isn't it, can you just imagine just
That's
how
insane.
it's just taking somebody's soul? It's crazy.
They're doing it even in like I don't know if you watched that show. It was like a three-part, two-part documentary, HBO about the telemark. It was called Telemarketers.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah,
Yeah, do you
I
remember
enjoyed
that
it.
part where they said they literally they have AIs of these telemarketers to where they don't even need to pay these people like minimum wage? Like, good Lord. Yeah,
It's
and you're
crazy.
right. It's definitely this idea of like in a way, I feel like the general kind of capitalists, like the true kind of powerful people, they see artists and creativity as like they begrudgingly pay for it because they know they can't create it, and so it's something that they can't quantify, and they're like, these gotta pay these bastards some more money. But once they can, in their minds, get the AI to do that, they're like, well, you're fucking gone. We don't need you anymore.
Absolutely. And the first thing that actually makes me feel a little worried about AI in music, because like most of it's so whack and just totally useless. BBL Drizzy.
Mm,
That
that's so
that
true.
that track is amazing. It's so good, and somebody created that partially with AI. Now,
Yeah,
now that's what we're talking about, using it as a creative tool. It's the first time it can't be done without one, a really funny guy who put in the prompts correctly or
yeah.
whatever. And it can't be done without somebody like Metro Boomin making this incredible beat. Um, but it'll get scary when if the AI can do it alone eventually. If it can.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I because I even saw some people feeling like I was seeing mixed feelings about the BBL jersey thing because I heard some people say like, well, my knee-jerk reaction is to be like, and it was an artist, like my knee-jerk reaction to be like repulsed, like no, 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 we can't do that. But at the same time, I was like, well, isn't this sort of like a weird, like kind of conceptually like sampling where you're kind of using a tool to create something creative? And I'm like, you know what, I'm open to it, but I'm totally with you that generally it worries me because yeah, they
No,
can
but think
replace
about it
it.
like this. What do we lose? What is it? Who gets lost in the shuffle when you can create your own samples like that? That would have been somebody's estate you were paying,
Yeah,
right? So all these old funk and jazz musicians, they're not going to get those royalties anymore.
yeah,
If you can just make your own bespoke, like I'm like, oh, I could really use like a Gil Scott Heron and Brian Jackson type track. Like
mm-hmm,
let me just try and make a prompt for it and sample that. Like, I mean,
mm-hmm,
it's like kudos to anybody who's got the creativity to do something like that, because I think that is an actual interesting application of the technology.
yeah.
But, I feel like I'm all about the soul, man. Like, I don't think a machine can really capture the feeling of what a human being can do. Like, I think I always go back to this Nick Cave quote where he's talking about people who were sending him messages saying, "Yo, we made a song in the style of Nick Cave on Chat GPT, and these are the lyrics and stuff." And what he said, I'm not threatened by AI because it can only do what I've done before,
Mm.
right? And it's like I change and I grow and I have these human experiences that inform the music that I make in the future. And it can't predict that, like no machine could ever predict me. Like my career trajectory, like it's is the most non-linear thing you could possibly
Yeah.
imagine. So the only thing that would be a good prediction would be if I was like making polka music or something. Honestly, like if it was or if it was like, oh, his next record is like it's just jazz. He's like on the flute,
Oh
you know,
yeah, you have your
Andre
Andre
3000.
3K, your flute album, the Cadence Weapon flute album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right in the sense of like, because I always find with the AI stuff, I always wonder like, yeah, BBL Drizzy, maybe that's an example of it actually being received kind of well, but it's still a joke. Like it's a joke. That's the point of it. It's funny. I wonder, yeah, to go with Gil Scott Heron, like I want put in ChatGPT. I want make me a impactful, politically charged Gil Scott Heron spoken word piece to end my album, and it's fake. Like I wonder, as the listener, will we ever get to a point where we actually resonate and feel that shit in our soul to be like, wow, that really moved me. Like, will that happen? I don't know. I hope we can always parse that there's something missing, but I don't. I just truly don't know, and it just feels weird to me.
The machine can make a reasonable facsimile of it, right? But here's an example, like the last song on my album, Too Long Didn't Read. No machine could predict this. Like the decisions that I've made with this song. The fact that it is on a regular time signature and how and the way I rap to it, nobody else would try it that way. And nobody would structure a song with the verses in that way. Like
Hmm.
it's totally unpredictable. And I wanted it to be almost like I was just at a jazz cafe or something and I was just rapping
Yeah.
and stream of consciousness. And I feel like that is something that was the point of why I did it that way was I wanted it to be like the first half of the album was embracing the machine and the second half was breaking away from it to the point
Mm.
where the last song is just me and a piano.
No, I love that. By the way, that's like one of my favorite songs, and it uh it really speaks to you making really interesting decisions to that a computer wouldn't be able, because I think the thing that we're saying in a way is like the motivations behind the artist, at least as someone who really loves music, that's something that I always am intrigued by. It's like not just what I'm hearing, but why am I hearing that? Like why did you do that? Like what's the context?
And what inspired them too. That's the other
Yeah.
thing that I always find that really interesting when I read books or like watch movie about an artist. It's like the things that happen in your life that end up becoming a eureka moment. It's never what you expect. It's always just the most random things. It's like I could be go for a jog and run by like a billboard, and that could send me on a trajectory to write an entire song. Right.
Hmm.
And it's like that is the elusive spark of creativity that is really what makes us human is our creative spirit. So
Yeah, like even like the with all these AI fake songs that were supposedly coming out with this whole Kendrick Drake thing, like when that leak came with Drake and people were like, is this AI? I was actually annoyed. I was mad. I was mad that we're like, are you guys serious?
yeah,
Unless I'm wrong and like there's a whole like evolution of technology. I'm like, why would a computer know how to do like, oh, mimic his flow for 3 seconds off this song from Mr. Morale? Because that would make sense. Like, why would AI know this? Like, are
no,
you guys serious? And then the Kendrick like actual AI song, I'm like, yeah, it sounds like Kendrick. I can understand that, but there's nothing here. There's no like
no.
actual like strategic digs, no character. It's just obviously just his voice. Like, so I'm glad we're still at the point where I'm like, I was so confident. I'm like, you guys are ridiculous, but
I knew when the Drake one came out, like me being a rap genius, I knew that it was real rapping and not AI.
yeah.
But it is troubling if your rap can be reasonably
Yeah.
compared to AI.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Yeah, that is true. Like even the best AI, I don't think can make a Cadence Weapon track and make it like make sense. Because
Fuck no.
yeah, absolutely not. And so we touched on it earlier, but I want to dive in a bit more. The sound of this record is really, really freaking cool. You blend in a lot of sounds like electro inspired, hip hyper pop, propels these songs to really exhilarating heights with a lot of energy. Like my computer. That one's maybe my favorite. My God, like that is just a freaking head nodder, like a head banger,
Thank you.
crazy, crazy. I love it. You flow so nicely on it. What inspired you to really like wade into the waters of this sound more and kind of go like dive in head first?
I think a lot of it was just DJing. And I think sometimes that's influenced my music, like on After Party Babies. That was when I really first just learned how to DJ, and I was really getting into house music and techno for the first time, really, like in the 2000s or whatever. And it was really exciting. It was like my discovery of these genres and attempting to make it at the same time. So now it's like I'm much more experienced DJ, but I've always been fascinated by a lot of Black electronic music and really influenced by Detroit techno and artists like DJ Bone and Theo Parrish and just the funkiness that comes out of Detroit and Chicago and these places and how they're able to balance that kind of human feeling with these electronic sounds. So that was something I really wanted to do, considering the themes of the album. It just felt like it was connecting really well. The other thing that really influenced me actually was a lot of 80s synth pop. Like
Hmm.
I always loved that, even as a kid. Like I remember Rock Me Amadeus, like Falco. I was listening to that as a kid. Video Killed the Radio Star. I'm trying to think of like, oh yeah, One Night in Bangkok. Like these
Hmm.
kind of like cheesy, almost like novelty singles. I was very influenced by those. And I'm realizing like this current record stuff like these artists, this group called New Music from the 80s, Tony Mansfield's group. I was really obsessed with him when I was making this record because they've got this the music is like just producer music, like it's so sick from the 80s. It's very electronic, but the songs are just incredibly strong pop songcraft. So I really wanted to balance this idea of these technological themes, the kind of synthy electro sound, but also keep the kind of pop songwriting pretty tight too. So that like a song like My Computer, that's exactly what I was trying to do.
Yeah, very, very tight, very punchy. And, like on a meta level, I feel like something I always loved about that era of electronic music is that it felt really tactile. It was like, it reminds me of something you said earlier where it's like you using the technology isn't using you. And it's like, it really felt really fresh and exciting, but yet it was still in people's eyes. Some people don't like how like rudimentary it felt, but I kind of
Mhm.
liked that, like the Casio keyboards shit. Like I like
Yeah.
that. I've
No, we
always
want to
found that interesting.
we want to keep that rawness, man. Like the
Hmm.
that's the human part of the machine is being able to just like urge out the kind of intensity that you can get from these machines by keeping things simple. And it's like, that's kind of always been in my music. If you like think about my first record, it's just like some really raw synth music with
Yeah,
just like some crazy rapping on it. And I feel like this is a refined version of that kind of thing.
right. And one interesting concept you fleshed out on this record that I really liked is on bots, that concept of an industry plant.
Yes.
And it's a term that I feel gets thrown around just like at a ridiculous rate. Often I feel nonsensically. It's just someone they don't like that they never heard of and they just do that. But it's I think a real thing. But what is an industry plant to you, first of all? And then secondly, like how prevalent is this? Like how big of a problem is this really?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the industry plan is getting a little tired, but
Hmm.
I just felt like the way I wanted to talk about it was it's this idea of just skipping the steps and not paying dues and this kind of instant gratification. And it's just there's nothing behind the artifice. And I wanted to explore an artist like that in writing the song. So it's this idea of somebody who doesn't write their own songs, doesn't have any real fans, and everything about them is totally fabricated. And that's who is boosted the most by the powers that be. Yeah, that was a song that was inspired by some Canadian artists who I was like, who the fuck are you guys? When it came to be award time. So that's all I'm gonna say. I don't wanna
Hmm.
we've had enough beef for a week, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't need to start another Canadian on Canadian crime.
yeah. I mean, I feel like you see it sometimes in Canada where you're like, oh cool, there's this random new artist that I've never seen before today, and they're like their picture is on the Spotify playlist, and suddenly they're just like everywhere. And then it's just like they're the artist. And it's kind of like you didn't see the development of this artist. That's the thing that's kind of frustrating is like you don't see how they got from point A to point B. It was just suddenly they were here and they're already on top. And so I just kind of wanted to explore that frustration.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always thought of this concept was just the idea of like an artist that gets chosen, for a lack of a better word, by the money, and then they just get propped up to where, yeah, they're just out of nowhere. And I sometimes I feel a certain way about the artists themselves, and then other times I kind of don't as much, but it still feels wrong. Like even when I'm like, I don't think they don't seem like actively trying to harm or like take other people's opportunities, but and I always wonder what should they do in that situation to kind of operate better, and that sometimes I don't know have a great answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to begrudge anybody for their experience or like what happened for them to get to where they're at, but I just feel like that wasn't my experience. And everything I've had to do, I had to work like 10 times harder than the next person
Yeah.
to get even an inkling of what some other people are just handed. So I guess the song really speaks to that kind of frustration.
Yeah.
It's similar to the frustration around not being able to like reach your existing audience. It's like these gatekeepers and ladder pullers. That's this is you know that expression, ladder puller?
Is it? No, I don't know that
No,
expression.
it's like when an artist they climb the ladder, they get to a certain point and they pull up the ladder so nobody else can come up with them
Oh,
or
shit.
after them. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, a lot of times the industry feels like, with the industry, I think just generally business and commerce these days, it feels like we've just created a bunch of additional landlords in their own. It's like these random middlemen that are not adding value, but now they're like important. Now they're just like, you got to get this random person to put you on, or runs this label, or runs this little spot playlist, and it just becomes really divorced from what matters.
No, my tolerance for the industry is increasingly lower. I find when I first started, and there was really it was just everything was me. I produced and recorded and did everything myself. Sometimes it feels like everything was just better back then
Hmm.
than it is now that I have like tons of people working on different aspects of what I'm doing. But I think the most important thing is just getting back to that essence of how I felt back then.
Yeah, I think that's a good guide. And looking forward now, what are some like upcoming projects, tour dates, or merch, anything, books that you want to shout out that people should look out for in the future?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am working on a new book. It's called Ways of Listing. That'll probably be coming out next year. And I want to give a big shout out to my Substack newsletter, cadenceweapon.substack.com. That has become pretty much the number one place I go to actually connect with people who want to hear what I'm doing. It's the only place where I can directly talk to my audience, so I really like it. So there's that, and I mean, for me, I'm already kind of thinking about my next record stuff, and I'm gonna do a collab album. That's the next thing I'm doing,
Is it gonna be
and
with a producer or a rapper?
it's gonna be with a rapper. Yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, we're just starting to talk about it, so I don't want to jinx it, but I already think it's like the Canadian Watch the Throne.
Okay. If it's backwash, I'll just say I'm gonna be really happy. Just gonna put that out there.
No comment.
Yeah, I love them. Uh, okay, man, that's really exciting. And but I definitely want people to check out Roller Coaster. It's well worth your time. It's really, really rich in ideas and rich in thought-provoking lyricism, but also the music, man. It bangs, and it really, really nice gym workout music, I have to
Oh,
say.
that's good. Thank you. I love making useful music.
Yeah, no, it's been a really good time getting into it, and I'm just really mad appreciative of the impact you've had here in the scene here locally, and I think you're just really making a difference in all of the different kind of avenues that you have to kind of spread your message and push forward. I feel like a really cutting edge type of artistry and some important subject matter too. So really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on as well.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much, and I hope things with your kid is kind of nice and relaxing if that exists as a
Mm,
new father.
well, I'm about to find out.
Take care, man.
All right,
Peace.
peace.
So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.